This is Cutting Down the Nets. It's Friday, March 17th game. So day 2 of the first round of the NCAA tournament. If you're looking for day 1 or Thursday's games, that was released yesterday. We will get into game-by-game projections. I'm going to show you what recent data shows for each of these matchups, as well as some nuggets on specific personnel. So, if you're new here, I basically do daily videos during the regular season on gambling. Had a disappointing year this year after last year was pretty strong. It's the first time I've really done this like full time, and I don't mean full time as a career. I definitely have a different career. I am a amateur bettor, but I feel like I know the markets, the teams pretty well, and rely on recent efficiencies to make my decisions. So we have the Friday slate we're going to go through. These are in order of tip time. Without further ado, let's have Coach Driscoll kick us off. Let's go! It's my favorite thing on the actual planet. Okay. I cannot watch that and not laugh. All right. We start with, now keep in mind here, I'll be in Las Vegas. This will be Friday, St. Patrick's Day. The opening game is a green team. I feel like there's going to be at least an Izzo steam or a green steam just for it being St. Patty's Day. Michigan State's March reputation. I think all those things kind of come into this line not going towards USC, but likely growing in the Michigan State favor. That's just me with a narrative. Maybe the line doesn't move at all. So looking at these teams, both are lifted by recent three-point play, but there's some variance there. If you look at both their profiles, it's bizarre. Like, they have the ability to shoot the absolute lights out, but in the same week, you can go from 12 of 20 in one game to 4 of 22 in the next. So extremely inconsistent. 4 factors. So the 4 factors are effective field goal, turnover percentage, offensive rebound percentage, and free throw rate, the rate at which you get to the foul line. Those are pretty neutral here. USC takes 36% of their shots in the mid-range, which is typically a big no-no for me. Michigan State, 38%. So these are kind of some throwback teams, very similar to like UCLA, where they aren't the rim and three teams that you see that everyone else has kind of become. And like UCLA, they actually make these shots. So both making over 40% of this kind of danger zone of the long jumper. But yeah, it works for them. Not my style, but whatever. Tiny tiebreaker in all of this. I think USC is able to get to the rim a little more frequently per hoop math and defends better there as well. But this is a tight one. I'm hoping to get some steam here and maybe get more than a possession. That would be my dream, is like a 3.5 on USC. Don't know if that number will come, but I don't see it going down. Looking at these other visuals I have up here, I have to pick one data set, one number for adjusted offense, adjusted defense, and tempo for each team to simulate a projection. So I have used kind of a combination of the median and the Paddy number for that. And in 10,000 simulations, USC comes within 57% of the time. I'm used to like low percentages like this and realistic percentages. It's tough for people new to gambling or new to brackets or whatever, just getting out of the mindset of like, oh, this is happening for sure. Like, the only for sure thing happening is like Bama's going to win their first round game. Purdue's going to win their first round game. You get in these 50, 60%, like just think if 10,000 simulations, like this happens 500 times or 5,000 times, and this happens 4,000 times. Like, these are very, very small edges across the board. I still think they're plus EV plays, and that's why I play them. So long story short, I'm on USC. I'm hoping for at least a possession, and we'll see if we can get a St. Patty's Day or an Izzo bump near tip time. Next game on the schedule will be Xavier and Kennesaw State. So kind of an interesting thing here. The Paddy number has Xavier as nearly a 10-point favorite, where the Paddy median is more like 15. So the line currently sits at 11.5. So right now, I think the Paddy median is a better indicator because Xavier does have some outliers. Most recently, in the Big East title game, they had an adjusted offense in the like 77, 78 range, which is in one game that can happen. That certainly can happen, and I look at all of those games, but that was 21 points lower, percentage points lower than any adjusted offense they had the rest of the year. So definitely an outlier, and being the most recent game, that really drags that number down. Now, a median is not averaging those. It's looking for the midpoint of the last 6 to 15 games. So that is not factoring that in as much. But all the other data points are really close to where this point spread is. Shot quality thinks it's right around there. If you looked at just their road neutral efficiencies, it's right around there. So, yeah, it's kind of tricky. But Xavier can shoot. They're the third best three-point shooting team in college basketball. And Kennesaw State can shoot. They're coming in 34th. Nothing really glaring on the four factors. Xavier without Zach Freemantle, but he's been out since early February. He's not coming back. And their splits have remained pretty constant without him. So I am leaning into Xavier because I think that Paddy median number is a better indicator of their profile, but certainly not a slam dunk play for me. Next up, the Baylor Bears versus the Gauchos from Santa Barbara. Another story of Paddy being around 11, Paddy median being closer to 15. This Baylor offense is good, and it's the same as it ever was from an efficiency standpoint. This defense is not. There's only been like maybe 4 or 5 games this entire year where the defense had an adjusted defense number close to Baylor teams of years past. Now, during their title run, they had a profile where their early season defense was in the 80s for adjusted defense, which is elite. Then they went through like a 12-game stretch of 100 plus. Tournament started and they just absolutely turned it on and went back to the 80s and ran all the way to the title game. I don't see that happening, but it's certainly worth noting that it has happened before, that Drew was able to correct a poor trending defense. I don't know if this is a poor trending defense, though, or just a poor defense. Shot quality metrics certainly have Baylor as shot makers, not shot selectors, meaning they've got people making tough shots on the team. Other teams generate great shots and just have awful shooters shooting them. See Mississippi State from last night at the buzzer. So yeah, where I'm at here is I'm betting Baylor mainly because I value the Santa Barbara adjusted defense as one of the worst in the tournament. I think I had them around a 110, 111. They're right there with Grand Canyon for just a very bad defense. So Baylor, very similar to Gonzaga, and you have an uber efficient offense, a struggling defense, but they're paired with these poor defenses. And I think that offensive edge is just something I don't want to be going against under any circumstances. St. Mary's and VCU. So the story here, I think, comes around ball pressure. VCU is 6th in turnovers forced. St. Mary's does not turn the ball over very much. They don't. But they also play in a conference that doesn't really pressure you at all. And if you've watched their games against Gonzaga, when Gonzaga felt like applying some pressure, three-quarter court, some trapping near half court, St. Mary's looked absolutely lost. I don't think that happens. They're not going to come to this game and be like, oh my gosh, didn't work on press break this week. But man, it looked like they had a tough time getting the ball across the court. They also played Houston this year and turned it over 30% of the time. But they only lost that game by 5. So imagine turning it over 30% of the time against Houston, removing all those potential scoring opportunities for yourself and only losing by 5. So if they turn it over, I think they can get back on defense. That helps too. VCU likely needs those extra opportunities. They need the turnovers. So recent efficiencies has VCU winning. But in the Gales data, there's also 2 Gonzaga. One of them's a beatdown. The other one's not a beatdown, but kind of drags their profile a little bit. But Paddy Median has VCU by 2. Paddy has VCU there. I do think they can cover the number inside a couple possessions here, but yeah. Do I stay on brand and pick them in the bracket? I don't know. Am I going to money line bet them? I don't know. We'll figure that out when I get out to Las Vegas tonight. Next game up on the tip schedule is Marquette versus Vermont. From an ATS against the spread perspective, this looks pretty close. You have Paddy on one side, you have Paddy Median on the other. It's like, it's okay. So both teams take over 40% of their shots from 3. I would label Vermont the better shooting team. Marquette defense lives off steals. They're 17th in turnovers forced, but Vermont 9th in ball protection. This isn't of the tournament teams. This is of the 363 teams in college basketball. So only 16 teams force more turnovers than Marquette, but only 8 turn it over less than Vermont. So I think that's a big edge for Vermont here. And I also lean Vermont when you have this slow-paced team who can shoot the ball. They can limit their own turnovers and limit second chance points from the opponent. That's just a pretty good recipe for keeping the game close. They have Dylan Penn at the point. He's a Bellarmine transfer, and then they have shooters everywhere that he can distribute to. So Marquette's strong. Shaka Smart was the greatest tournament coach ever at VCU and has lost like his last 7 tournament games. So who knows what will happen. Again, ATS-wise, this is kind of a toss-up, but I'm leaning Vermont for the reasons I mentioned. Creighton and NC State, this is another similar scenario where you have a turnover-reliant defense. Now, what makes NC State unique is that they need those turnovers not just to help their defense, but it helps their offense to generate those steals for layups and dunks on the other side. So recent data shows this as kind of a toss-up analytically using recent play, but I think that is a very, very key stat for this matchup. So Eric Haslam at Haslametrics has NC State 5th in point per steal. That's really like a live ball turnover number. And Creighton is 4th in ball protection in all of college basketball. You can't turn them over. And really, there's no one in the lineup with turnover concerns. Like Shireman might cough it up a few times, but Alexander won't. Nembhard won't. Guards are exceptionally careful. So I lean Creighton based on this alone. If you eliminate the helter-skelter runouts from NC State, turn this into more of a half-court game, I am perfectly fine backing the Jays there. Although data has this super, super, super close. So kind of a toss-up, but based on matchup, leaning Creighton there. We'll see what numbers are available when I get out to the desert. Next up in the schedule would be 4-seed UConn versus 13-seed Iona. If you pull up Iona's profile on Bart Torvik, I see the tale of 3 seasons. The first third of the season, no one made a 3 except Hofstra, which was a loss for them. Then in the midpoint, the data was pretty balanced, and that's when their efficiencies were really bad, both from a shot quality perspective and from a real efficiency standpoint. That's where we saw them in some of these MAAC games where it's like, man, they're favored by 13, but my stuff has them as 4-point favorites, 5-point favorites. So that was kind of the mid-season. They turned it on late. Where they turned it on late was not missing a 3-pointer, and I don't think that's them. So I don't know. Getting a bit narrative-y there, but I do think it's fair to dock their recent adjusted offense due to just some insane flame-throwing performances. So on the UConn side, I think there are concerns with ball protection because Iona does apply a little pressure. But this offensive rebound edge is probably being overshadowed by Houston, Northern Kentucky. I noted on yesterday's show that Northern Kentucky is like 363rd in defensive rebounds, so Houston likely to crush the offensive boards. UConn, number 1 in offensive rebounds, and bottom 50 is Iona. So all things considered, you factor all that in. I think there's some massaging with Iona's inconsistent data, and I'm pretty comfortable with where that's at. And the rebound edge for UConn, I do think Rick's a better coach than Danny, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, is leaning UConn there. Next up, a tough one. So Kentucky and Providence. Most of the Paddy number is due to Providence's recent 3-point stretch on defense. They've allowed 33 of their last 68 3-pointers to go in the hoop. So that's not good. And when you do that, your adjusted defense will certainly suffer. But they had a stretch leading up to that where, I don't know, it was like 15 games where it was 27% from three. So the truth's probably somewhere in the middle. And given how strongly I rate recent play, Providence might need a slight adjustment there. But, I mean, it's only 3 games. It's 3 of the, 15 I'm looking at. All those things kind of balance out. Don't want to get too much into it. Both these are really strong offensive rebounding teams, but are able to limit their opponents in that aspect as well on both sides. So kind of a fun nugget here. Oscar has the free throw rate of 54.5%. He draws a lot of fouls. And Bart Torvik has the foul committed per 40 minutes. So basically it takes how many minutes you play, how many fouls you're creating, and extrapolates that. Like, if you played every minute of this game, how many fouls are you going to commit? And that's what drives me nuts when coaches auto bench someone with, 2 fouls in the first half, 3 fouls in the first half, and you see their foul committed per 40 is like a 1.8 or a 2.1. Like, look, you can play this guy. Like, I don't know. I don't know why you got to give up 11 minutes of them here that you're afraid they're going to miss the last 2 minutes of the game. So, yeah. But anyway, Oscar draws fouls, and Croswell and Moore on the Providence side both have fouls committed per 40 minutes of 4+. So at least one of them is going to be in foul trouble, potentially both. And I think that could be a difference maker in a tight game like this. So recent data, leaning UConn. I mentioned that Providence might need a little massaging there. So it's probably an ATS toss-up, and then some free throw edges on the Kentucky side if they can start to draw into the Providence bench. Next up, nearly could say friend of the family. Drake's head coach grew up about 8 miles from where my family grew up. Certainly good athletes. His brother played in the NFL. Fun nugget there. Jared DeFries, also a tackle for loss monster at the University of Iowa. So they're coached by Darren DeFries, whose kid is a sophomore, Tucker DeFries. And it's basically the coach's kid and then a bunch of 30-year-olds. These guys at Drake have been around forever. So no stranger to the moment. Certainly a cohesive bunch. Story of this game is Nishad Omir for Miami. He averages 14 and 10 roughly. He's a game time decision. I did see some video of him shooting today, as if that's an indicator if he's going to play. Like, I could shoot off 2 torn ACLs, but he's got an ankle injury. We'll see what his mobility's like. I don't know if he plays, but I do think it's very, very important. I love the Miami guards. I just think without Omir, this is definitely the spot for Drake. Paddy has Drake by a full possession. Paddy median has a toss-up, and Omir has not missed many games. So most of that data is with Omir from Miami. So I will be betting Drake. I think it's a disservice, the numbers that I'm probably going to have to deal with. Like, I don't want to take Drake plus 1.5. Really hoping for a possession, but I don't think that's coming. I think this will be kind of a trendy sort of upset pick, and for great, great reason. Oh, my nemesis. Oh, Bryce Drew and the Lopes from Grand Canyon. These guys absolutely clowned me during the conference tourney run, where on my videos I highlighted how bad this defense is. Like, this defense is so bad. But they made 29 of their 53 pointers in their conference tournament and move on. So I'm going back to the well. The average adjusted defense in college basketball is a 104.6. In my stuff, GC is like a 111, which is tough to do. I mean, usually bottom 50 teams have adjusted defensive efficiencies in that range. Now, they can shoot. I don't think they're 29 out of 50 good, but they are good. They can shoot. But this game will have plenty of pace, and that defense versus Gonzaga's offense is likely going to lead to an uber efficient offensive performance from the Zags. So I will be on the Gonzaga side, although certainly getting no favors from the sports books with lines in the 15-16 range. I have it closer to 19 to 20. I circled FAU about a month ago as that team. Their social team on Twitter released a absolutely fire hype video that basically referenced a bunch of Seinfeld quotes and scenes from Seinfeld about basically being the team in Florida. It was fantastic, and they certainly play a fun style. So I bought the shirt and everything. I'm like, this team is a thing. Saw their draw, got really disappointed. So just know the amount of bias I have as I try to break down this game. Here's the bowl case. Okay, Memphis shows as a Paddy play. I get it. I don't like to go against Paddy. Maybe the Memphis number gets steamed up a bit. We'll kind of see what happens there. But Memphis, they beat Tulane by 50. So that's really going to affect their Paddy number. And then they had that sleepwalking performance that Houston gave them in the title game. Kelvin Sampson's sister had just died. His twin sister had just died. They sat Sasser. Like, that team just was ready to move on to the NCAA tournament. You can kind of tell. So, again, narrative street here. I get it. My heart wants FAU. The recent data certainly leaning, maybe even betting the Memphis side. So I'll see where I land there. Shot quality has this game closer. Again, I think there's a reason that the recent data is showing, and mainly it's the Tulane and the Houston game for Memphis. But they do have maybe the best point guard in the whole tournament, Kendrick Davis. They run through two outstanding players. So, yeah, that is a concern. So we'll kind of see where I go here. I think this is a fantastic real-life game and look forward to watching it, maybe a live betting opportunity. K-State, Montana State. Here, this number not as good as the opener, but rightfully so. So Kansas State, a very, very good home team, which is kind of inflating their overall profile a bit. They're just really, really good at the octagon, and that kind of lifts their overall profile. I am on the Montana State side, reasons being twofold. They force turnovers 20% of the time. K-State, 298th in ball protection. So I'm expecting enough turnovers on the K-State side to matter. And then they have really long possession lengths. So their APL, average possession length on KenPom, has them around 19 seconds. So basically when they have a possession, on average, they're not shooting until there's at least like 11 seconds on the shot clock. And that's as a whole. So if there's ever runouts, those are, 3-second possessions, 4-second possessions, things like that. So this team can kind of take the air out of the ball. I don't know if there's enough juice for the upset. They have a very low three-point rate. Like, they're not an awful shooting team, but they don't shoot many threes. But they draw fouls at an insane rate, 5th highest in the country. K-State also can draw some fouls. So I don't know. I see them valuing the possession and getting a few extra possessions. Playing with a lead would be super, super important for Montana State. They can't fall down big early with the style of play they have. But man, if they got up just a little in the first half or early in the second half, we're nursing a lead, really gonna apply some pressure to K-State. I do think K-State wins the game, but I like Montana State staying within the number. Final game. Man, another good game. These Friday night games, gonna be. Hopefully they're good, but they look good on paper. They look like fantastic matchups. Can't wait to be just 3 sheets to the wind, just yelling at the TV. So Kent State comes in as a near Paddy pick'em. I think the key number I'm looking here for is turnover rate for the Hoosiers. No one in the Big Ten pressures the ball outside, maybe Rutgers, maybe Northwestern. So I think if they can force a 20% turnover rate for the Hoosiers, if they can get that, I like their chances. Indiana has done that in a few games where pressure is applied. They faced Kansas this year and were turned over 23 times, 13 of them steals. Kent is no Kansas, but I do like them being able to slow down the Hoosier offense. Now we would need the Kent offense to produce with Sincere Carey creating for the shooters behind the arc. Sullinger is a great shooter. He's over 40%, and maybe Thomas could get hot as well. I think this is a fun game, late night. I'm back in the flashes. It should be a fun game. They do double the post a lot too, and Trace Jackson Davis has shown to be an elite passer out of the post. It's been a difference maker. But leaning into the data, leaning into the moment, Kent State won't be afraid. They played a good non-con schedule. A lot of close games against some Goliaths. So that's what I'm looking at for Friday, March 17th. Will there be a video for Saturday and Sunday? I don't know. There will be data for sure. So the data I'm showing is in the description of this video, and I will for sure be updating those sheets as matchups come to fruition for Saturday and Sunday. If I have time on the airplane, I might even just post some like look-ahead lines, like, hey, here's some potential matchups on those sheets as well. I just don't want to be too overwhelming. So good luck to everybody. I'll be in Las Vegas tonight. If you tailed me and lost money this year, maybe I'll buy you a beer if you can hunt me down. This is Cutting Down the Nets.